What is your personal encounter with the paranormal? Ghosts, aliens, sleep paralysis, glitch in the matrix, etc. Story 1. I don't believe in ghosts or paranormal connections and shoot, but this one really baffles me to this day. Happened a couple of years back and I still can't forget it. Warning, story is kind of a downer. Also, sorry that it's long, but this is about as condensed as I could get it. Most of my friends have had trouble with substance abuse throughout their lives. Just the crowd I hung around with, I guess. Around the time of this story, one of my closest friends was clean off H for the longest they had ever been. A couple of months, but still fantastic progress for him. And things were looking good. We were hanging out one day, and he gave me some great news. Since middle school, he and his mom had been fighting for a medical malpractice lawsuit that happened to him when he was younger, and they won. He got something like 10K out of the deal, so most of what we talked about that day was just how he was going to buy his mom something nice, and how he was going to use that money to finally go to college. I honestly hadn't seen him that happy in years, and it was great. A day or two later, I was sleeping like normal when all of a sudden I woke up at around 1 a.m. in the morning. I felt great. In fact, I felt absolutely euphoric. I felt like I was laying in the sun on the most beautiful summer's day in a puddle of 1,000 puppies, and that was just the first second. The next second was that X1000, and the next second that X1000 as well. Within moments, however, I went from "this is pretty nice" to "oh shoot, something is seriously row" before blacking out. All of a sudden, I was walking down the stairs to my friend's basement. It was absolutely destroyed with shoot thrown everywhere and empty bottles and syringes laying around. He was sitting there waiting for me on the couch with tears in his eyes. He just kept repeating that he was sorry and that he didn't want to hurt anyone. He said the money didn't last him long, and he's back to being his broke jerk self, that he was sorry for bringing me there, and that he just needed to say goodbye to someone, before finally saying goodbye to me, and everything fading out in another wave of euphoria. Me being logical to a fault and pretty straightforward, I woke up the next morning thinking, darn, what a weird dream, but not much else of it. Wrote it down in a dream journal I was doing at the time and completely forgot about it. Ended up going to work and class like normal. Then, a couple hours later, my friend's mom called. She called me to break the news that my friend had passed away that night. Overdose. It wasn't until a couple of months later when another friend of mine, also ex-addict, was trying to console me by telling me how he went out with no pain, and how it was probably the best way to go when things started to get really weird. He started to explain to me what an overdose actually feels like, the overwhelming euphoria, and how it's impossible to explain to someone who's never experienced it before, i.e., me. It was then that what he was describing started to sound really familiar, and I went to my phone, opened my dream journal, and started reading the entry from a couple months back to him out loud. He pretty much said, "Yeah, exactly that. Where'd you get that story?" And told him the whole thing. Both of us were at a loss for words, and I still am. As I said, I don't believe in this stuff, and if someone told me this story, I would say they were high as foo-wuck, but it's a memory that I will never forget. Edit. Thanks for the gold. I think this is the first time I've ever told this story, but it means a lot to hear it affecting so many people. To whoever is reading this, I hope you have a wonderful day. Answer: I had a similar experience. Same as you. I've always been friends with addicts and suffered from addiction myself. My friend got into heroin before me, a few years before me. Then he got clean. At this point, I was using dillies and oxys. Then I started smoking heroin. One night I had a dream. My friend came up to me and sat down on the couch. We talked for a bit. Then out of nowhere, he says you have to stop using H or you will end up dead like me. This threw me off. I was like, Haha, what, you're not dead? Then I woke up. My heart was racing and I was crying. I think how weird it is. Because my friend's certainly not dead and been clean for over a year. I figured I was just feeling guilty over my own substances use. 2 days later, my friend's mom called and said they found him dead, overdosed in his car. No one knows why he relapsed. I feel sick thinking about the dream, like I should have reached out to him and asked if he was doing okay with his sobriety. He was my best friend for 11 years. We spoke on the phone the day before he died, and we were meant to hang out that previous weekend, because he came to town to visit me, but I stayed home and blew him off to get high. Story 2. My mom's experience with what she thinks was a ghost. She went outside around 10 p.m. for a cigarette years ago and saw a very elderly woman walking up our neighbor's back stairs to their veranda. Mom said she wanted to ask if she was all right. It was very rare for our neighbors to have visitors that late. They were also elderly. But Mom said she completely lost her voice and felt stunned, though she couldn't look away. She ended up getting out a hello, and the woman just disappeared. The next morning, Mom made a joke to our neighbors asking why she wasn't invited over for their nightcap with their visitor, and they very casually replied, "Oh, so you've now seen our ghost too?" They were excited over it and not at all scared. Barry, neighbor, says an elderly lady follows Elwin, his wife, everywhere, and they feel pure comfort around her. But their own children and grandchildren are frightened by the lady on the stairs when they stay. Story 3. We joke about the girl who lives in our house. My wife insists that she was a victim of a fire in the schoolhouse in the 1870s that was on our property before the house was built. We've never seen her, but there is the occasional door locked or unlocked, or the errant attic light on, and so forth. Not a presence that is very strong or overbearing. There was one time, though, when my wife was in the kitchen, and I was coming down the stairs, and we both heard "You're a good girl" Dottie coming from the living room. Dottie is our dog, trouble but a good girl to be sure. Apparently there is one more person besides my wife and I in the house who agrees. Story 4. Before my grandpa passed away, he had always been telling us how after he had died, he would appear to us in his white clothes and watch over us. He passed away from cancer when I was 8. The years passed and I was a very unhappy kid. Undiagnosed autism. Intimacy assault victim, so at age 14 I tried to hang myself. It failed, thank God. As I was drifting away, my grandpa's image appeared to me and told me this wasn't my time to go yet, and begged me to wake up. I did wake, lying on my bedroom floor, and I ran downstairs to my mom, crying, telling her what I had done. She went upstairs shortly after to clean up the ropes and told me much later that it looked as if they had been cut clean with a knife. After that traumatic event, I began seeing things, puffs of mist outside in front of my bedroom window. When I was 16 was the first time I actually did see that it was my grandpa, just floating in front of my window. I tried to talk to him a few times. I asked him why he couldn't come inside. He responded that he couldn't, because my mom had asked him not to. We spoke about a few things on occasion when he mentioned the day where I tried to take my own life. He told me he tried to save me by cutting the rope and then went to check on me a few times. One time, my younger brother apparently saw him slip into my bedroom and got scared, after which my mother apparently went upstairs, asked my grandpa that if he was there to please not come in anymore as he was scaring her son. I decided to tell my mom about all this and took her out for dinner, told her everything. She was shocked and amazed and confirmed that she did tell her father to not come inside, and that was why he stayed outside. I'm just glad she believed me. I have since had more traumatic experiences with the paranormal and have shut myself off to their influences, but I still remember the events with my grandpa vividly. Story 5. My sister had a dream that she was kidnapped and being used as an intimacy slave in a random basement in an unknown location. Obviously, it freaked her out, but that's not the crazy part. The next day, her ex-boyfriend called her to ask if she was okay because he had a dream that she got abducted and nobody knew where she was. Answer: a few years ago, a serial rapist broke into my neighbor's home and violated 2 girls. One escaped, naked and screaming, and was rescued by another neighbor. The police came and a manhunt ensued. Despite a massive effort, the perp disappeared into thin air, leading the police to tell us that he likely lived in the area. Then a few local women came forward to say that in the previous few weeks they had been followed by a man that fit that description, or they had seen him looking in their windows at night. I had nightmares for weeks after this. In my dreams, this faceless monster climbed in my 2 window to violation me, or I was hearing those 2 girls scream for help over and over. It was awful. 5 days in, my ex called. He lives clear across the country and we had been uncoupled for about 7 years. When I didn't answer my phone, he texted, "I had a terrible nightmare about you last night, and I just need to make sure you're okay." Lo and behold, he had this vivid, scream-filled dream in which a man climbed in my window and tried to violation me. Story 6. Mine isn't scary in the slightest, but I like to think of it as a weird glitch in the Matrix. One summer afternoon when I was younger, my family heard the music of an ice cream truck coming down our road. Ice cream trucks never come down our road. We ran outside and placed our orders and expressed our astonishment to the woman inside. "Really?" she said. "I come down this road every week." Sure you do," we all responded. She drove off, and we never saw her again. I'm sure it was just a mistake on her part, but I like to think there's an alternate reality where we get ice cream trucks down our street every week. Story 7. This is more glitch in the Matrix, maybe? Years ago, I went to a friend's Halloween party, and right after walking in the door, I saw this guy across the room, immediately recognized him, and thought, "OMG, I haven't seen you in years." Waved in excitement, and he did too with the same fervor. After I made my way across the room and we began talking, I slowly realized that I wasn't sure I knew him. As we both tried to figure out where we had met each other, we realized we had never met and didn't have any friends in common. He was at the party somewhat randomly through an acquaintance. I thought it was just me with this feeling, but he swore he knew me too. After chatting for a bit, that feeling faded, and I had no feeling of familiarity anymore. Even typing this story out doesn't do the feeling justice. It was so strong, like revisiting a place you've spent a lot of time but haven't seen in a long time. Anyways, we figured out we didn't know each other, had never met, and were both somehow mistaken. I figure we must have been best friends or lovers in another life. I'm not really sure I really believe in past lives, but it was such a strong feeling that I've never felt with anyone else and doubt I'll ever feel again and cannot explain at all. Anyone else have this happen? Answer: this has happened to me too. When I was at college, I saw this guy in the cafeteria and just got this overwhelming, "Hey, I know you" feeling. He seemed to be looking at me the same way, so we started talking, trying to figure it out. We both recognized each other and couldn't believe we were meeting there. Turns out our paths had never crossed before. We spent the whole academic year trying to figure it out. He lived close to the college, and I started bumping into him everywhere in the town after that. It was almost like the universe was like, "You two, be friends." But we had some, incompatible views. Never did see him again after college ended. I hope he's doing well. Story 8. Not me, but my dad. He grew up in a small village in Greece. One day on his walk home, it was storming quite heavily. He was standing under a tree in an attempt to wait it out. As he's waiting, He's approached by a slow old woman who he'd never seen before. She had an umbrella in one hand and a walking stick in the other. She asks him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm waiting out the storm so I can go home. I don't want to catch a cold." She tells him, "You have a long life ahead of you. I would risk catching a cold if I were you." And with that, she starts to slowly walk down the street and out of sight. My dad waits for a few more minutes and takes her advice. He starts walking home. A few more minutes pass, and he hears an explosion. He turns around and sees the tree he was waiting under was hit by lightning and blew up. Frightened, he runs to his home, hoping to bump into the old woman to thank her, but he never saw her again after that encounter. He's convinced she was a paranormal being since he never caught up to her that night, even though she was so slow. He had never seen her in the village before or after that moment, and no one knew who he was referring to when asking around. For her, edit, changed, mortified to frightened. Also, thank you everyone for the replies and awards. I won't be able to reply to all of them, but I'm reading as many as I can. Answer. My grandpa had a similar experience. He enlisted in WE at the very end of the war when he was 17, and during his training he was at a firing range. He was standing off to the side waiting for his turn, or maybe he was finishing up, not important. A lieutenant he never saw before came up to him and told him very sternly, "You're not supposed to stand there, move." A little flummoxed, he moved to a different area, and just a minute or two after he did, a bullet ricocheted right where he would have been standing. He never saw that lieutenant again. He figured he may have been saved by a legitimate guardian angel. Story 9. Just recently, about 2 weeks ago, I was on my way to Home Depot when I arrive at this stoplight. After sitting there about 15 or so seconds, the light turns green. As soon as it did, I felt like I couldn't move at all. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like if something was telling me to not go just yet. After about a second or two, this red Ford Explorer barrels through the intersection, running the red at what must have been about 50 macros mph. IDK, how much exactly, but it went ridiculously fast. After the car sped through the intersection, I could move again. I don't know what that something was, but had it not been for that, I would have probably not been able to tell you all this little story. Edit. Holy shoot, I did not expect to get this many upvotes. Thank you all for replying and blowing this up. Answer. My mom was about to cross the road one day. The light turned green for pedestrians to walk, but my mom saw a lady across the street. Her eyes got really wide like something was wrong, and my mom just stared at her instead of crossing. A car sped through the lights, and just like your story, my mom wouldn't be here if she hadn't noticed that lady and stopped to stare at her. Story 10. I don't know if this was some weird coincidence, but when I was 14, I was staying the night at my friend's house and we decided to sleep in the guest room instead of her own bedroom. She kept telling me she thought the room was haunted, and I thought she was just trying to wind me up, but just before she went to sleep, she mentioned it again. At that moment, everything suddenly went really cold, and the radio randomly switched on and started making weird static noises even though nothing touched it. My friend refused to sleep in there ever again. Story 11. Growing up, my sister and I were good friends with our neighbor, Matt, who had a dog, Molly. Molly ran away one day, so the three of us set out into the nature preserve behind our houses to look for her. Matt's brother, Chris, set out separately. In the preserve is an old damel from the 1700s that is rumored to be haunted. When we got to the mill, we saw Chris and the dog on the other side of the river, maybe 30 yards away. "Matt, I got her. Bringing her home," Chris yelled. But something didn't feel right, and the three of us gave each other that look. We headed home knowing Chris would be a bit. behind us since he'd have to go a mile or two out of his way to cross the bridge. When we got home, there was Matt's mom and the dog. She was under the porch the whole time, she said. A little while later, Chris showed up, having never even gone into that part of the woods. Story 12. Many years ago, I was about to walk out of my locker room with my books, and for some unknown reason I stopped. The second I thought, WTF am I doing, and went to take a step outside, a window pane fell from 4 stories above me and shattered 2 miles in front of me. I was so shocked and thought that would have made an absolute mess of my head if I hadn't stopped. Still don't know why I stopped to this day. Weird. Answer. Oh, shoot. I was walking along downtown one day and stopped for a few seconds for no reason, started walking again, and these assholes demolitioning an old house dropped an entire big old window from the 3rd floor right onto the sidewalk where I would have been had I not stopped. They had no cones or barriers up or anything. I would have been dead. Story 13. In my hometown in northern FL, we would sometimes get a thick fog that was terrible to navigate. I was always told by my grandparents that if I ever saw Confederate soldiers walking in that fog, keep my head down and move along even if they talked to me. Rare advice for the South. As for Yankee soldiers, I was to nod and point them in a direction if they said they were lost. And if I ever ran into a woman in a white dress named Caroline, don't tell her your name and excuse yourself before she touches you. Story 14. 1 week after my great-nan passed away, I, 3 at the time, told my mom that I had seen her in my bed, and she had told me to tell my nan, her daughter, that she was okay now. I don't think I could even comprehend passing, so spooky stuff. Answer. Had something similar. Friend who died suddenly a few years ago, I was asked to eulogize his funeral. The night before, he visited me, sat at the foot of my bed and had a conversation, and he apologized that he had to leave before he was supposed to. A dream, of course, but it felt very different, like a memory, and I remember it with absolute clarity. Story 15. I pissed off a ghost at my old job. Short version, was told the carousel was haunted and didn't believe them. One night, the maintenance door was open after I emptied the ride of guests, and my second insisted they hadn't opened it. Closed it, loaded guests, and it was open again. It has a turn latch that you put a padlock on, so it could only be opened intentionally. I went inside, the center of the carousel, mostly just the breaker and all the mechanical parts in there, and switched on the light to check for a maintenance guy that hadn't talked to me. Empty. I'm a little spooked, so I say. Loudly, I'm not dealing with this shoot tonight. We got 1 hour left, so get your act together. In my mom voice. Do safety checks. Start the ride. Phone rings, and when I answer, there's no one in the other end. A few minutes later, it happens again. After I hang up, I call base to tell them something's wrong with the phone. Supervisor calls back, says sometimes the phone rings randomly, don't worry about it. I recant the tale to a coworker, and she looks at me funny. Did you turn the lights off before the music? No, I need the lights to get to the switch. Oh, well, make sure you never do. And if the phone rings after that, Dean answer, just leave. I figure it's some kind of electrical short that causes it and go home. In the following days, I keep searching. I see it move out of the corner of my eye, or hear it running after I've closed for the night, but shake it off as I was working 15-hour days continuously. The next time I opened the carousel, we took turns. I go to take a potty break and I come back to the security guard standing next to my ride. I saw him while you were gone. Just be careful, he says to me. What are you talking about? The ride op? The one that tries to grab operators? I try to think which of my coworkers is that rude. He then goes on to explain that one of the 3-part ghosts is attached to the carousel, and he's the only mean one. He tries to grab operators and causes bad luck and ride malfunctions. Apparently, I made him mad by yelling at him, and he decided to haunt TF out of me. Edited for brevity. Story 16. Dad was out with his GF about 2 hours away from home, and I had the house to myself. I was showering about 4 to 7 hours before I expected them to return, and I heard our garage door open. It had a very distinctive sound due to the way it echoed through the kitchen and across the open plan, tiled house. Immediately heard the clicking of his GFS boots and knew it was her from how short she was compared to the rest of the family. She walked like she had to prove something to make up for her height. She was